Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer, and after a week and a half or more of canceling everything because I wasn't feeling good, I'm back in the box seat here. And my good friend Juan Ayala from the Juan on Juan podcast and all kinds of other things he does with other, you do as many things with other people as I do, and you're all over the place and you're talking all the time and all that jazz. So I feel like you're a brother from another mother. Hi, Juan. How are you?
How are you, Emily? I know we did an episode. Let's see here. I have it on my desktop.
You haven't put that out yet, right? Because I haven't seen it.
No, I haven't put it out yet. Like how you were saying about the backlog, we recorded this.
Just send it to me when you're putting it out, and then I'll do it and same all that. You're the only person I know with as long of a backlog as I have right now. I'm running about a 9-week turnaround.
Yeah, it's and again, I don't like doing that, but it's just the nature of the beast type of thing. It's just the way it runs.
How did you end up in that situation? This is the first time I've ended up in that serious of a situation. How did it happen to you?
Really? Is this the first time you ever have a backlog?
No, I've had a backlog of like 3 or 4 weeks, right? But I've never had a backlog of like almost a whole season.
So when I first started my podcast, I recorded like a year and a half's worth of material.
Yeah.
I had a year and a half worth of content, like when I first started podcasting.
Yeah.
So and I think I've told you before, what I do is I'll record, and sometimes depending on sometimes it'll get to the point where I'm releasing 2 episodes a week, one on Monday, because my release date's Monday, and one on Friday. When it gets too hairy, right? When I'm like, this is a lot of stuff, I'll start putting out 2 a week. Now, my whole thing is every Monday, drop the episode. Ever since I started, every single Monday. And what I like to do is in between episodes of either interviews that I do, I like to do research. And as of lately, I've been doing a lot of solo stuff, more presentation style, Juan on Juan, the brand. So I'm going to be focusing more on the brand, solo stuff, solo research. And then every now and again, I'll sprinkle in I'll sprinkle in the interviews, which people also like, and the think tanks, et cetera, et cetera. But I like to have the leisure and the time to actually do research and research whatever I like. Because sometimes I struggle to find that spark, right? It's like, what's the next topic? What's the next thing? And sometimes a lot of the people like the 98% of my shows is free format, open conversation. And a lot of people don't know that, but it's like, hey, sometimes me and you, Emily, we just sometimes just turn on the recording, go, what are we going to talk about today? I don't know. So you just turn it on and we just start having a conversation, and it's more organic. People like that sort of thing. So I do that a lot. I enjoy that, but I also like to stick to one topic and do a deep dive on one particular topic for the overall theme of the episode. So I've been doing that. I've been reading, I've been researching, and I've just been hanging out. So that's why I do that, though. But yes, sometimes I'll have a substantial backlog, but it's gotten to the point, honestly, and I know it sounds like egotistical, but I'm producing content for the people who are, right, the patrons, the supporters. So they get it months ahead of time, weeks ahead of time, and the public, well, the public is the public, so they'll get it whenever they get it. So I'm not too concerned when it comes to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of, how long have you been doing this now?
I started in 2019. So I started in September of 2019. So a little bit now.
Yeah, so I started in 2016, right? And so it evolves over time, right? And at first you're like excited to be doing this, and you just want to get everything out there, and you want as many people to hear everything you have to say. And then that kind of changes, and you sort of figure out what your like show, other work, life balance is, and like how you value your time and your work and all that other stuff. So it evolves over time. For me, a couple of things happened. I shifted, like I have, for my supporters and whatever, they get like a lot of content. They get all kinds of shows, like depending on the level of support, sometimes you're getting 3, 4, 5 shows a week that I do with different hosts, different sort of themes, right? And then like the basic level gets at this point like 1 or 2 shows a week. But I started splitting my episodes. Instead of putting out the whole thing with a public hour and a private hour, I started doing 1 hour one week and the second hour the next week. right? Because I was feeling like I started working a lot more at my other job. I was feeling stretched. I also was doing all of this other private content and whatever. And I just found like a better balance for myself. And at the same time, I thought that I might take a month off this year, right? Because, you know, like my mom passed earlier and I felt okay right after she passed, but I was like, I'm worried that this might hit me later. So right now, while I feel okay, I'm going to get ahead. That way, if I want to take time off later, I can. And then that just never kind of happened. And so now I'm like, right now, after I record with you today and I'm recording with Cheney tomorrow, I have enough episodes to get me to the end of the year. So I may not record any more strange mosaics for the rest of the year. All the other shows that I do with other co-hosts and whatever, like that's a different scenario with those. So it's kind of on one hand, it's nice to have that, but on the other hand, it's like when you go to put them out, you're like, what did we talk about again? And I'm like re-listening to the show. But what's funny is like it all seems to align divinely timing with like things going on out there, that the show actually comes out at the time that like it makes the most meaning for, you know, the most amount of people or whatever it is. So yeah, I just figure it out as I go. What did we talk about last time I was on your show? At some point when you put it out, make sure you send it to me because I can't even remember at this point.
So just in case, literally there's an ice cream truck parked right outside my window right now. So
oh yeah, they're pulling up because they heard we're talking, dude.
Yeah, they heard we're talking. And so it's funny you say that because I'll get comments and it'll be like an episode that I recorded like a month or two ago. Like, oh, except you're wrong on this, and this, and this. And I'm like, listen, I don't even remember saying any of the stuff that you just commented about, but I'm going to take your word for it because I'm not listening again to the 2-hour episode or whatever it was. So that happens to me too. But the last one that we talked about, I went ahead and I named it, I'll tell you right now, the algorithmic entrapment, intuitive research, and the holographic doppelgangers. And we talked about,
man, that sounds like it's going to be awesome. I have no idea what we talked about.
We talked about your stories of the Uber drivers that were being kind of creepy NPC like,
yeah.
and the people that would mimic you at the dance floor and would have the dance off or whatever. So we talked about that and how maybe perhaps there is this virtual voodoo doll somewhere. We have these clones of ourselves that we don't know about, and almost like the occult double. So yeah, that's what we talked about, and that was a little bit ago, but that'll be out. It'll be out here soon. And
all right, so you all will see that with him or at some point with me
in 3 weeks. Comes out in 3 weeks.
Awesome. I love that you have it all scheduled like that already. Yes. Well, you're the only person I know who puts out as many shows, and you're just talking all the time like me. But you've reached a height in my sort of like, this person is a really good researcher and I like what he does, that I thought we could dedicate an episode to a film study of some of your videos, because I think I've only done this a few other times. I did this for Michael's appearance on Greg Carlwood once. Remember when I did the whole breakdown? The whole episode was me breaking down what he'd done and like, you know, adding on to it. And we kind of conversed back and forth and it was fun. I think I may have done this once or twice before over the years. But what I love about your videos is like, I can't really listen to more than just a few minutes of them because they make me have so many thoughts that like I have to tell you the thoughts before I go watch more, otherwise they'll all get lost in the mix. And recently you had 2 kind of shorter video clips from one of your things with Donut. And I was like, all right, I got a lot to say about both these things. And the videos are 18 minutes and 9 minutes. So I think we can get through talking about those in 2 hours, even if we watch it. I was taking all these notes today. I'm like writing notes and I'm like, we should just fucking watch a video and I'm just gonna hit pause and I'm gonna say stuff and I'm gonna show you stuff and whatever it is. So we'll spend hours talking about 25 minutes of content. How does that sound?
It sounds like it's going to get hairy, but I just want to say one thing. And this is, I enjoy Donut. I know you haven't done your episode with Donut yet. And I had told him to reach back out to you because you guys need to collab. And there's a reason why I love doing episodes with Donut. Number one, he's a great guy, genuine person, super nice guy. And I enjoy talking to him. And the more I podcast with people, the more I start to realize who you mix with alchemically and who you don't, right? So you start to really get a gauge on who you enjoy podcasting with versus who you don't. And Donut is one of those guys that I enjoy podcasting with. And also the other most important reason why I like podcasting with Donut is because because he makes me sound a lot smarter than I actually am, which is a good thing because I'm not as smart as, and it's the editing. He's a great video editor, and he really, the way he edits, I love it. And that's why I love collabing with him, because his edits are crazy good. And I tell him, I go, dude, because those clips are from like 2-hour episodes.
Yep.
Right. So from longer presentations, and he'll take the greatest hits, and it's just, and that's the thing, it overloads your senses.
How much you want to bet that fucker doesn't exercise either?
100? No, he doesn't exercise.
Everybody who has time to do that shit doesn't exercise.
Yeah, he does not exercise, I promise. Well, actually he goes to the gym. He goes to the gym. I'll give him that. He does content creation for a living, so he has the time to do it. But that's why I love podcasting and doing episodes of Donut, because his edits are on point, and it's just like, it'll overload you because it's just boom, 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 and then you're like, oh wait, there's no more, and it's like, no, here's 5 more things. So absolutely. And that's why I like putting those clips out, because they're straight to the point, very full of information. And like how you said, that's what it's supposed to do. It's doing its job. If I'm putting it out and it's sparking other ideas within you, and that's how the research works. We're doing research on one thing, but it branches out into a million different paths. So
yeah,
absolutely.
I like the way it sort of is when you guys get together, is kind of like he trips into a topic, like he asks like, what if, da 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 da, right? Kind of like a harebrained hippie dude, like maybe took too much acid, asking a question about something that occurred to him while he was doing whatever, right? And then you come with the answer and the knowledge, but he is a very good editor. So if he's doing that himself, like the whole setup is good though. It's kind of like, when you watch some of these like bigger, more sort of like produced conspiracy shows, or when you watch something like Ancient Aliens and they build it up, but then the answer that comes in, like for at least anybody who knows anything, it's not very satisfying, right? But yours is satisfying. Like that you come with the stuff that you want to hear on the end of the what if, right?
Listen, Emily, stop pumping my ego up already bigger than it is, okay? Just a regular guy. I read a lot of books and I remember a lot of things. So that's it.
Yeah. All right. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So I will include in the show notes these clips so people can go back and come up with their own sets of questions and whatnot. And maybe people can go watch the entire episodes, but we're just dealing with the clips here. So the first clip that we are going to take a look at, and I'm going to stop and ask questions and say things and pick things apart and glorify you some more for some things and whatever as part of this. The first clip is this one right here. It's called Purple Lights, Music, and Alchemy. All right, so here we go. I already skipped past the commercial for everyone. Thank you.
Donut, and I'm here with the one-on-one podcast, the homuncologist himself, Purple Lights, Music, and Alchemy.
Yeah, I think alchemy is at the core of quite literally our existence. I believe they're still practicing alchemy today, even the people that run our country.
Have you heard what Benjamin Balderson has had to say about this lately? Like he did a show with Mario Garza on the periodic table, which was funny because I had just contacted him about being part of the series on the periodic table that I told you that I'm doing. That's going to take probably 2 years to do. But he was kind of talking about how all these people walk around thinking that they're doing this thing that they're calling like spiritual alchemy, and they think they're alchemists, like people who listen to our shows and our friends. And it's like alchemy is happening around us all the time, and people may experience alchemy, but that is different than being an alchemist and knowing what the fuck you're doing.
Absolutely, yes.
So the most simplest way to put what alchemy is changing lead into gold.
No, so that is a byproduct, okay? So the secret of alchemy is to quite literally manipulate reality. When you complete the Magnum Opus, which is the great work, whatever that is, right? We don't know because that's how enigmatic it is. Everything is written in code, everything is really cryptic. When you do the great work of turning lead into gold, which can be symbolic as well, the light that is supposed to be emitted, this is why I say light is very important.
If you would like,
Oh, there's a commercial. All right, it's a good chance for us to. I'm going to turn that noise down and play.
You want to watch? You want to watch?
Go
You
ahead.
want me to pull it up? Because I can pull it up without commercials.
Sure.
Because yeah, that's pretty
I
annoying.
think that's the only commercial that's going to be in there. I think it was just because I didn't play it first. I think it's okay. There's no more commercials in it. Okay. Are you just real quickly, because the topic of purple lights doesn't come up till later. Is the light that a person emits when accomplishing the great work, is that a purple light? Is that the violet flame that we hear about?
No. So to add context as well, these videos are, I think, a year old now. These
Wow.
particular, yeah. So
All
these are older, and I just reposted them on my channel. So just for some context, so
Okay.
I've learned a lot more since this came out. But the light that you absorb from the Magnum Opus is not. There's nothing points at it being
Color.
If anything, it'd be a red, like a dark reddish, almost purple. Like
Okay.
if you ever look up a philosopher's stone, it's like a darkish purple red type.
I know
of
what you're
thing.
talking about. Yeah.
So maybe.
Okay. Oh shit.
Your DNA, it becomes infused in your DNA.
I missed something.
Light is very important because the light that is emitted from that reaction quite literally changes your DNA. It becomes infused in your DNA, and it changes your genetic makeup in order to where you're able to step outside of reality and you're able to manipulate reality real time. So if you think about the book of...
Okay, so you wouldn't know this, but like I recounted both in a Conspiracy Cocktail episode and then a show I did with Christopher Gardner, this experience that I had at a party where I was watching like basically what looked like a DNA be rewritten with like this like a light code. Like I was correlating it to.
We talked about that on the last episode.
Right.
You and I did.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because that was part of that conversation, right? So when you're talking about this right here, like I do think that some of these, like I think we can definitely say, and we'll get into this a little bit more with this video and the next one we're going to look at, that what's happening at some of these like dance parties or whatever is very equal in some ways to some of these rituals where they used to do this stuff. And part of what is being accomplished is some of what you're talking about, that there is being a light emitted that is rewriting or changing the DNA, not only of the people who are doing it, the people who are sort of alchemizing this experience, but also of others who are around it on some level, possibly, right? Who are in that sort of environment. Okay, continuing.
Enoch and how he was able to, after being shown all the secrets, being shown everything, he was able to become Metatron. You know, on Baphomet, right? Not to get too satanic, but on Baphomet's forearms, it's coagulate and dissolve. Well, I think that's what's going on, where they're able to dissolve out of this reality and coagulate somewhere else. And I think that's part of the alchemical process. You become an androgynous light being.
So, a couple of things. So I had some pretty interesting experiences with Metatron's cube as like the visual grid in my mind's eye at parties at a kind of specific point in my life, right? And it's, you know, this at a certain point, I kind of realized some of the alchemy of what was going on in these situations. And that is exactly right. Right? You kind of stop time, or you're able to sort of step outside of it and observe it and then kind of step back into it, right? And Metatron and that grid seemed to be like the scaffolding for a lot of these experiences. Did I ever tell you about the time I've told this before, so I don't want to bore people who've heard it, but I don't know if I've told you, and it's pertinent to this story, about the time that I met the guy from Egypt at the party. I was dancing. Did I ever tell you this Egyptian story with the Metatron's cube?
No, I don't think you did.
So I was at a party, I was dancing, and I was like, a lot of times what I would do during this period of time is I'd close my eyes and I would see like these sort of sacred geometry grids and patterns right behind my eyes. And it was almost like the way they were moving or lighting up, I can't tell you if they were if my dancing was responding to what they were doing or they were responding to my dancing. Sometimes it felt like they were showing me like a map or like a pattern of moves to do. But other times it felt more like I was doing moves and I was seeing like what the pattern was. And I think some of it was like when you do that long enough, it becomes confusing. What is the stimulus and what is the reaction, right? But I would see like these sacred geometry grids, and then oftentimes behind them, I find myself starting to look at some sort of scenery or picture that was giving me information, right? So I have this Metatron's cube, which was like one of the geometric things I found myself looking at the most. And what was interesting about it is like at junctions and points on the cube, and I'll pull it up here so people can see what a Metatron cube looks like if they're not
I have one right here
already. Right, there you go. Right, let's find like a good image, just like what the grid looked like behind my eyes. Let's see. All right, so just here's like a pretty simple map, right? Okay, so there would be all this sort of points, and it's kind of like layers within layers, and sort of like, you know, but there's areas where there's like junctions where there's like many lines coming together, and oftentimes there's a circle around that. So I would see this grid, and a lot of times where these points would come together, there would be almost like a light that was brighter than the rest of the grid. And oftentimes it was this sort of magenta-ish purple color that would flash. And whenever I would kind of open my eyes, wherever that light was, like on the grid in the room, there would be a person there that I had sort of differentiated as different than most of the people at the party. So this may be a way someone determines like the real person from the NPCs, or somebody that has like that spark or that charisma that not everybody else has or whatever. But when I would see one of these lights flashing and I would open my eye and look sort of where that grid was pointing me to, there would be one of these types of people there. It wasn't generally just like nothing there in the room, or someone who was just kind of like a filler type. It seemed to correlate with the grid would kind of set itself up around sort of highly energetic people. Okay, so I'm dancing, and all of a sudden I'm realizing that I'm looking at the pyramids in Egypt being built, and I'm watching this interesting sort of like disc pulley kind of thing that is, Benjamin gave me the word that his culture uses for it, like in the Odin's alchemy, that right, Odinism kind of thing. I can't remember what the word is, right? But it basically has to do with like hyperconductivity and things like that, and being able to sort of move things effortlessly, right? But I was watching these large stones being levitated up the hip mountain with this thing that was creating a vibration or a hum that was allowing them to move pretty simply, right? So I'm dancing, I'm looking at this thing behind my eyes or whatever, and some guy comes over to me and he taps me on the shoulder and he's like, "Can I ask you what you're doing?" Right? So I explained to him that I was watching this geometry behind my eyes, and that I was like dancing sort of along with what the grid pattern was, and whatnot. And I didn't tell him the thing about Egypt. I just told him what I was doing. He's like, "Oh, that's really interesting. I've never heard anyone say that before. My name," I can't remember what he said his name was. "My name is so-and-so. I'm from Egypt." And I didn't tell him about the Egypt thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But whatever it was, like he was pulled over to whatever it is that I was doing there, right? Like I was following some geometric pattern or some coordinates, right? That felt resonant to him. And then the thing that I was looking at was actually the place that he's from. It was weird that he told me he was from Egypt. Like most people, when you go up to someone at a party and you introduce yourself, do you say, "Hi, I'm Juan from Orlando," or do you just
no?
like,
That's what
Juan.
I'm saying. That's a weird thing to like open up with, like, "Hey, you know, I'm from so and so." It's like you don't usually say that. So the fact that, and were you on any substances by any chance?
I was on meth and I was on mushrooms. I'm just being straight up, right? Okay, so
you were on one.
But you were talking about people being able to coagulate, dissolve out of one reality and coagulate in another. The way that happened, the sequence of events there was almost like some entity coming to confirm to me, right? Some traveler between dimensions, like being attracted to the energy that I was sort of either generating or participating in, and being like, "Yo, yes, you just saw that, and I'm right here."
Well,
right?
That's not too far-fetched, because the idea of dance, right? The concept of body movement, you have the whirling dervishes is one I can think of, where they enter altered states of consciousness. and the fact that you're doing a certain something, right? Well, dance, body movements are used in ceremony to, in a theurgical fashion as well, to invoke deities. So what you're saying kind of sort of correlates with the immortal alchemist concept, which is I wouldn't call him a deity, but it's this person that achieved the magnum opus. And some people say he is Falconelli, some people say he's Count of Saint Germain, some people say he's Flamel, Nicholas Flamel, like all these different alchemists that have been seen throughout history over and over again. Well, the reason that they're seen throughout history is because they achieve the magnum opus, they dissolved out of reality, and they serve as these sort of gatekeepers to tell people when they're close to also achieving the magnum opus, like, hey, you know, you're doing a good job, and then you turn around and they're gone, like the typical movie fashion.
That was exactly that.
Stage. Yeah,
I never saw that person again that night or at a party ever again. And no one else ever since then has ever asked me what I'm doing when I'm doing that. People have said you're a good dancer. I've opened my eyes and seen people following me or copying me or doing whatever, but no one has ever come over and been like, what are you doing? Right.
You know, Dragon Ball Z, do you know that show?
I mean, I've heard of it, but I've never watched it.
So yeah, you know about the fusions in that game, like, or in that show, like where they, like, two different people confused together into like one super being.
No, that's cool.
So there's like this dance that they do, right? Like this whole thing that they do. And if they mess it up, they fuse, but they fuse into something completely different that they weren't supposed to. So they have to follow like the ceremony or the ritual, whatever, to a T. And I'm going like this because they fuse like this, but it's kind of silly. But these shows, they show things that I believe are based off of real occult principles, and they just kind of twist it around and make it fun and more digestible for people. But
did you see the OA?
I still haven't.
You got to see the way that they do their moves in order to move between dimensions. I
think we talk about this every single episode that we do, and I still haven't.
Yeah. So same thing. Okay, continuing on with Juan on Juan film study here. There we go.
By manipulating matter, not only is it sensory, but it's also intellectual. So there's different things at play. I'll use an example.
Oh, I know what you're saying. What I wanted to say, when you said the thing about how it changes the DNA, like when someone achieves that, right? So let's just say for like a minute, one time years ago or whatever, I accidentally achieved something like that dancing, right? Like I did exactly the right move in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. And I emitted a kind of energy that changed something inside of me, therefore making it easier for me to accomplish that again and again and again, because it never happened until it happened. And then it happened frequently in terms of like having these like very sort of outside of time experiences, but also experiences that had incredibly rich amounts of information and knowledge passed to me that I would have had no way of knowing from any, other than that experience. Right. Okay.
But with Jay Widener, because he's a director, the lights, camera, action, like this whole cinemagician, Hollywood act type of thing. Well, he told me, because he's an alchemist, he told me that he has a room that it's specifically for being in the dark. The way that they would meditate back then, if you look at secret societies, Masonic orders, etc., they would use caves for their ceremonies. Well, it's got to do with the production of DMT.
Have you ever heard of a rave cave?
Not that particular, but I know about the warehouses, and I mean.
Right. That's basically like they're very generally dark black warehouses. Even if you go inside of them, they're often painted black on the inside, right? Kind of thing. And a lot of them, sometimes you go to a place where there's only a party there one time and never again. But a lot of times there's parties there on a regular or semi-regular basis. So like that becomes a store of the energy and the experiences that have happened there over time, right?
It's got to do with wanting to induce a near-death experience, because when you're able to do that, you're able to unlock certain things within your own self, within your own psyche, that I believe you're able to use.
In OA, one of the things that the MK Ultra doctor is doing to his subjects is like pushing them, like basically drowning them and killing them and then bringing them back, right? doing that over and over. And I will say that in some of the most exhilarating experiences I've had with dancing or with psychedelics, sometimes I remember one where like it really was the first time I kind of moved over into this weird territory where I realized I was having sort of communication with or information like transfer like with other realities or other things than myself. Like I thought I was going to die. Like I felt like, oh my God, this mushrooms are hitting me so hard. It's so hot in here, right? Like I didn't know, like I was like, this is fucking crazy. That after a while, I got used to that feeling. And so it didn't make me think that I was going to die, right? But yeah, that's definitely, when someone crosses over into that space the first time, that's what it feels like.
So they say that that's a Knights Templar ritual that they would, the 3 days would be symbolic of where they would go underwater and they would do something. I know in some cases they said that they would drown them. In other cases they said that they would take a certain type of, I think it was a poison or something that they would take, and they would be gone for 3 days, almost like a ritual type of thing.
Yep.
So that's where that comes from. Again, allegedly, right?
Yep. It's funny, like whatever he's getting these video clips for, like I can think of a building in downtown Los Angeles that I've been to a party at that looks almost exactly like that, right? All right.
Use in this reality, right? You have people who they say they've seen their whole life flash before their eyes. Well, what if you're able to do all that in a controlled environment where you go into this cave for 3 days, the chemical that induces sleep? Well, when you're in darkness for a long time in a cave, and this is why monks back then would meditate in caves for a long time, it would be the super melatonin where they're in this deep sleep. Now, when you wake up and you see light for the first time, it floods your brain with another chemical. And when they both mix together, you get like this crazy psychedelic hallucination. A dark cave. He has a room specifically almost like a sarcophagus, a coffin that he goes into. If you really think about the idea of the vampire, right? Dracula, where they sleep in this coffin. Well, what if that was part again of a magical order of some sorts? We always have the battle between werewolves and vampires. It's alchemical allegory. It's alchemical symbolism is what I'm getting at. So by them personifying it, by making it into a story that people resonate with, well, I took it a step further. I said, okay, so you're telling me about being in the dark. They're talking about extended periods of times, days at a time, 3 days at a time. He says, I have a room where I go in for 3 days and I don't come out, whatever. We're talking about darkness and about the flooding of light. Well, if you think about what cinemas are, what movie theaters are, it's a simulacra of a cave. And then what do they do in there? Well, they flood us with all these lights of all these movies, all these sigils all at the same time. And I said to him, I said, Jay, is that some sort of magic that's happening? Is that some sort of alchemy that's happening? He said this, and again, you can listen to the episode. He said, I can tell you as a director, that is a very effective technique.
Well, also with musicians.
So movie theaters are one thing. People are sitting still and they're just taking all of this in. And there's pretty much, you're in a dark room, but there's pretty much a constant flow of light of varying degrees of brightness, right? I think movie theaters are certainly interesting. They're like the very easily controlled sort of black box. But again, and I consider myself the sort of alt media resident expert on the dark rooms of the warehouse parties. Like I've been to some parties where it is pitch black inside for a long period of time, and then they'll flash really white lights or really brightly colored lights for a period of time, and then it will go dark again. And there's this sort of onslaught and then pull back of the kind of lights. And sometimes you have a screen up at the front that is having a visual show, but other times it's just lasers and strobes and LEDs and various kinds of lighting technologies that create optical illusions or senses of depth. Like I was telling Christopher about this party I went to, that they had this really interesting lighting that made the room look endless. When those lights weren't on, you could see where the back wall was. But when they had these specific lights, they appeared to go on forever, right? And it kind of made me think about, you've heard those stories where someone will say that they were abducted and they were taken into a UFO, and the UFO was small on the outside, but when they got inside, it was the size of a football field, right? Like there's lighting techniques that you can use, that the way they interact with your eyes, you know, and with the pineal gland and all of this kind of stuff can give the illusion or the delusion, right? Whichever you sort of prefer, of endless amounts of space and endless repetition of the same pattern, right? That like it's one light literally generating something that then spreads out and seems like it's everywhere, right?
And have you seen the newest ones where it's like an avatar, like a 3D being that's like reaching out sometimes towards people? Have you seen those? Those are crazy looking.
Have you seen the hologram from Afterlife, the party Afterlife in Tulum, Mexico? Is that what you're talking about?
Afterlife.
I'll pull up what I'm talking about to you.
Hologram.
I'll pull it up. They have a lot of really good shorts on YouTube. Let me see if I can find Afterlife.
What the heck?
Shorts. Let's go to shorts and I'm gonna look up Afterlife.
I've heard that if you crack an egg at the bottom of the
Oh, what's
ocean,
happening?
something
Oh, it's
crazy.
like an actual hologram within like
First
the
I got my
place.
head, and
Hold on a second. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. So Afterlife Tulum. All right, let me see if I can find the one here. This is one right here. I just looked at, let's see if I can find there's
That's
a regular
wild.
video here. Let's see. Here's this one. I'll show this one. All right, let me just open it and then we'll how do I pause it? Okay, there we go. All right, so this is actually outside, which is amazing that they're able to accomplish this outside this well. And people who are, you know, talk people who have knowledge about like Project Bluebeam and those kinds of ideas, take a look at this. But here we go. So this is at outdoor electronic music festival in Tulum. All right, so
Yeah, that's crazy.
so did you see though, all like in the beginning, the way he sort of put the walls up and stood up, there was those two linear lights. And then at the end, there were these were the type of lights that were in this party, but there was tons there. They were like arranged in a way that a few rows of them made it look like there were hundreds of miles of those lights behind that, right? Like that it went on for an endless amount of space and time. That they're able to do, like, think about this. Like when we hear from ancient cultures that like something descended from the sky, right? How do we know that it isn't just some fool with that, you know, like that, right? Like that was pretty good, wasn't it?
There's one that, and this is from 623. It looks like the hologram is floating in the middle of the room.
Oh, I know which
Like-
one you're talking about. Is it the Eric Prydz? Is it Eric Prydz from Tomorrowland or something like that?
It's Afterlife Visuals. It says hi Biza, I guess. Or
Afterlife.
Bilza?
Do you want to play it? Or is it on
Yeah,
your computer?
Yeah, it's on-
Afterlife Ibiza, and what is it? What is the name of it?
It's like I looked up Afterlife hologram, and it's one of the ones where it's like floating in the center.
All right, I'm looking for it. Is it a short or a regular?
I'm just on Google.
Oh, I
It's
see it. Here we go. I got one right here. Okay.
crazy looking, man.
Pause that. I think tell me if this is the one right here.
Yep, that's the one. Look at that.
Yep.
How crazy is that?
All of this is also in the black box, and there's the addition of people moving as opposed to just sitting and taking it in, right? And you know, kind of my take on a lot of this is that at the kind of things that I go to, there's a lot more of observation and experimentation. Let's do this and see how someone responds to this? Do they notice? Is there some level of interaction that indicates that it's a participatory process, as opposed to we just have a captive audience and we're just beaming them with stimulation and programming them or affecting their consciousness or their pineal gland or whatever, right? That there's a lot more, let's tinker with this, let's try this, let's see who notices, let's see who participates, let's see if people based on their sort of energy field or their personality type, or I'm sure it gets even into like blood type or genetics or whatever, like have completely different experiences with this technology that we're using, sometimes with people's awareness and consent at these events and sometimes not. And let's just pay attention. And then they've collected their data. And then when they have these big, huge festivals like Afterlife, like EDC, like, you know, Tomorrowland and Time Warp and all of these kinds of things, or when they put out a movie or something like that, they've already figured out like who responds to what and how it affects people. And this is what we want to do now. So just like everything else, there's the esoteric or the occulted, you know, sort of version of something. And then there's the exoteric or the, like what we're delivering to the sort of, to the public. Right. But it's different when you involve movement, right? Because there's something about the way people experience, stuff when they're moving as opposed to when they're like a sitting captive audience, right? So
and that's why a lot of the times, I think I've told you this before, when I'm like out mowing the lawn or something and I have my headphones in, I'm in the zone, right? I'm learning, I'm listening to an audiobook, I'm listening to a podcast, whatever it is, and I'm intaking it, and I can remember it because there's something about I've also, right, the whole journaling and the doodling as you're listening to lectures, that helps you remember things much better. So, and there's definitely some sort of MK Ultra stuff happening at these festivals. They know they're testing stuff out. They know what's going on. I'm sure
by
the
the time
three
it gets
letters.
to the festival, they're not testing anymore.
Really?
They know what they want to do. At the shit that I go to, like I go to abandoned warehouses in East LA with a couple of hundred people. And if you go into downtown LA, if I were to take you to LA with me on a Saturday night, like I could take you around, and within 5 miles square, we could probably find somewhere between 5 and 20 different parties to go to, playing different kinds of electronic music with different types of crowds, with different types of visual shows, with different types of sound systems. So just imagine, like for a second, pretend that it's not city blocks with warehouses and that it's labs in the chemistry building at UCLA. And each room you go into, there's a different group of students or assistants or teachers experimenting with different stuff, right? And so, but the person who's the head of the department goes in and checks on everyone. And right. And then when they have when this class has written their paper and this class has written, then they've figured out like what really works and what has what effect, then that's the thing that they deploy at these bigger festivals that have tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of people. So I think when you're in the underground, you are participating in the experiment. People who go into the underground, they like to experiment with their consciousness. They're not afraid to go into a dark, dirty neighborhood in the middle of the night. They are not afraid that, okay, maybe they'll go and the party will get broken up and they'll lose their money, right? They're whatever. They're not afraid. People who are going to bigger festivals, it's a more commercial thing. They are paying to have like kind of a guaranteed sort of experience of whatever. And it's just a different sort of vibe. That is more, those are the people who are going to like, buy Coke or Pepsi or believe the bullshit that you're selling them or repeat the propaganda or whatever. Whereas the people who go to the underground are either going to like pretty immediately go to like another thing and experience something different. So they're willing to put their body and their consciousness in all kinds of different states all the time. And it's not like generally the experiences, I'm not saying they don't have a lasting effect on them, right? But they're used to having their mind and their consciousness sort of really stretched. Whereas
Mhm.
somebody who only goes to festivals, and those festivals, you can generally, they're super expensive. You can only go to so many per year. It's like, it's a different experience, right? It's like the difference between someone who works on a cruise ship and someone who takes a vacation on one once a year, in terms of like understanding how a sausage is made and all that kind of stuff, right? So, you know, but I just lost my train of thought.
So my socks would be blown off, is what you're saying. If I was
Your
to go
socks
to-
would, well, we'd go into some parties where we'd be like, we'd go into some and you'd be like, oh, this is cool. And I'd be like, this shit's boring. And we'll go to another one. Well, like, I'll be like, this is cool. And you're like, this shit's boring. And then we'll go into another one where we're like, well, neither one of us are feeling this, but look how fucking weird these people are acting. It's kind of fascinating. Like, let's stay and observe this for a while. And then we'll go into another one where I'll like, you know, we'll both be like, this is the like most fun fucking thing ever. And I'm having a great time. Nothing much weird is happening, but like, this is fun. And then we'll go into another one where it's like there is so much like weird stuff going on in here. And it might be a mix in terms of like, this feels like light, or this feels dark, or a mixed crowd, or like, or whatever. But there is so much stimulation that is so fascinating and so interesting that it's just like going into like a carnival of the mind, that, you know, that type of thing, right? So, you know, I'd say that if I go to, at this point, I probably only go to 10 parties a year. There was a time when I went to 10 parties a month or whatever, right? I probably go to 10 parties a year, and I'd probably say 5 of them are good and 2 of them are special. And 1 every 3 to 5 years is like an experience that like is something completely different than anything else that I've had before. Right. You know, and generally it is based on the quality of the sound or the quality of the lighting that determines like, wow, this is out of this world. Whereas whether it was fun or not is more about the mix of the people, although those things can be interactive with each other, right? It kind of sucks to be somewhere where some cool shit is going on, but like the people, there's like no energy from the people, and vice versa. Like it can be fun to go someplace where like there's a cool vibe from the people, but it's like not that interesting mentally, right? Like I like the combination, but for me, interesting mentally is probably more important than having fun at this point, because for me, that is fun, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I was gonna bring something out, just remind me. I don't want to derail us too much, but remind me later on to bring it up. It's got to do with the holographic projection systems and all that in Egypt. So
okay, cool. All right, let's get back to our video here. Somehow we're stretching this out even farther than I thought.
Say before the theater, right? You got the theater where they would go and watch a play. With the cave and the cinemagicians, I think you're onto something so big, so huge, and I think this is a perfect segue to get into some interesting finds. We're talking about music, and there's this thing called the barbershop quartet. The red and white is interesting because it's the
Knights Templar, right? Okay, so continuing.
Knights Templar color too, red, white, and black. But getting into plays, music, frequencies, and alchemy, barber pole has got that red and white, right? What's a barber shop? Has the checkerboard floors in all of them, right? They got this symbol. People would go to the barber shop. This is where you get all your information, and this is where surgery happened at.
All right, so the Templar's cross, right, is also, and I think I've showed this to you before. Have you seen the pictures I show of the creation of a light photon?
no, I'm sure. I think you've showed it to me one time, but no, you said creation
Of a light photon. This is what the
wow.
this is, hold on a second. I'm going to show you. That's the origin of light. But if you look at the creation of the light photon, where's my I might have typed the word in wrong here.
I'm looking at it here. The shape of photons, the hollow.
Where I'm not finding the. Maybe it's the birth of a light photon. What is that?
I put creation of a light photon.
Right here. Here it is.
Yeah,
right
that
there.
one right there.
That is the creation. What are photons, right? This is what a light photon coming into existence looks like. And if you look at this one right here, you will see this pattern in indigenous cultures everywhere. All of these kinds of patterns, you see this on their beading, on their artwork, right? You see all kinds of stuff like that. But right here, this is the Templar's cross.
And it's interesting that that's the Knights Templar, because the lure of the Knights Templar is that they had obtained the alchemical secret.
Correct.
So, again, back to the whole concept of light, you becoming this light being, it's infusing your DNA. That would make a lot of sense that they would maybe see that as they're doing the Magnum Opus, and they're like, all right, this, this is going to be our thing from now on.
Correct. Right. So you're zeroing in on, and also we see a red cross. They collect blood. The red cross collects blood, right? So there's something about this light photon that correlates it to, I think, people's blood. Like, I think there's some, I think the how one achieves the Magnum Opus is a different recipe depending on some of the elements present in your blood. We don't all have the same thing, but one of the things that we often experience is there is a scary or some sort of shocking or traumatic experience, and then they do this collection of blood, right? So I think that like there is some, so I think some of this can be achieved multiple ways. You can, I'll get into this a little bit more as we go through this, because you start talking about location of places based on ley lines and rituals, right? But sometimes, let's continue. I'm going to get into why I'm talking about this, right? But I think it's not a mistake. So you're talking about the barber shop with the Masonic floor where they perform surgery. What else happens at the barber shop? Sometimes someone gets a little nick shaving, not a very good barber or whatever it is, but also you're cutting people's hair. Essentially, you could be collecting their genetic material, which is not that different than collecting their blood.
And making a little Emily homunculus or femunculus.
Yeah, making a little Emily homunculus, right? But this is, I'm pretty sure at this point, right, that the great work happens when someone recognizes a light photon coming into existence, when someone is able to catch sort of the light photon. There's a million things we can get into around it, and I think we will. But I think that this is pretty much, I think this gets as deep as like Jesus nailed to the cross, right? Type of thing. That, you know, we see the cross as a flat two-dimensional thing, but in reality, it's certainly at least four-dimensional. It's the hypercube. Right? It's the hypercube, and there's dimensions. We see this, but there's also poles kind of poking through in different ways that you don't see when you look at it head on. And each one of these is open. It's like when you show your graphs of like the Cartesian coordinates or whatever it is, each is opening up like an angle or a hallway, right? That has like a version of the same reality. So when I was talking about those lights in the building and how the way that they arrange the lights can create the illusion that there's many more yards or feet or miles of the room than there actually is. Have I shown you the weird picture of the hypercube light?
No.
Okay.
And when you're done with that, I'm going to show you something because you're making me think of something. And I have some other stuff too that relates to this. Again, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Okay. So there's this company called the Hyperspace Lighting Company. And this is really interesting for a number of reasons. Like, I don't know if you ever heard the whole thing about like the inside the hotel where Elisa Lam died. There was also a company called the Invisible Light Agency, right? So, you know,
Lisa Lam. I've never heard about that.
Elisa Lam was a girl.
Oh, you've shown me this. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So all we're looking at here is a box. And in the corner of the box, you have basically like a cross, right? You have, you have look how many little realities are generated by where these things come together. Jesus is nailed to the cross at the junction of those bars. And then there's other ones you can't see. Look at all the realities. And then look at all the places that they say the avatar of Jesus has appeared over the lifetimes and eons and whatever. Right? Look at all of the rooms that light angle, those light angles create, right? And if you've ever done, like if you do psychedelics and you close your eyes, this is what the mind palace inside often looks like. And you can find yourself wandering around in rooms and going, which one am I in? Because there's one right next door to me that looks exactly the same as this one. Right. And I think that part of that great work is recognizing that there's many iterations of reality, each slightly different, each at a slightly different light angle that you can move around in. You can step outside of time into one of these other dimensions or angles of the cross here. Right. And sort of observe Like if you're up here in this room, it acts as like an observation deck for the one below it, right?
Angels, angles.
And
yeah,
you got it, right?
And
Go ahead.
I just Googled something and my episode came out on, so people are posting my stuff on Reddit. So let me let me pull this up real quick because it made me think of something and I can't find the picture, but it's in my thumbnail. Let me pull it up here. And all right, so the idea, right? You're talking about multiple dimensions. Have you, couple things, Emily, you need to finish Jenny Fucked.
It's right over here. Yeah.
You're touching on stuff. You'll know. If hashtag if you know, you know. Once you read that book. And also, have you watched the newest Flash? It's really good.
What's Flash? I've never heard of it.
The superhero Flash.
Okay, no.
Anyways, the newest movie is pretty good. I think
I
it's
used to have
on
a car that I called Flash.
it's on HBO Max. I think it's what it's on. And this side, let me share my screen here real quick. So this idea, can you see this?
Yep.
So we have the multiple dimensions, and now you have the idea of the tree of life, right? We see it 1D.
Yep.
But in actuality, there's another side. There's the
Yes.
universe B on this side, but these tunnels, they connect everything. And if you look at this right here, this is Steffi Grant, which is Kenneth Grant's wife, I believe it was. Look at this
Yep.
drawing that they did there. Almost like, again, they're hinting at
There's
that.
children's toys that look like that.
Yes, I've seen that before.
Yep.
So the idea of there being multiple realms, and especially when it comes to the tree of life, which is essentially a mandala, you meditate into it and you're able to transcend to other realms. I mean, it's not too far-fetched, but yeah, I never knew about that photon thing, and it would make sense that they're kind of giving you a nod at, hey, when you're in the know, you're in the know. And according to the lore of the Knights Templar, they had stolen the secret of alchemy, and they then used it for their benefit. And that's why, right? So you're talking about movement and dancing and your feet moving around. Well, these Knights Templar, which funded a lot of these cathedrals, right? Mystery of the Cathedrals, we're getting into Fulcanelli and alchemy and everything. They left the secrets imprinted in these cathedrals, but also a lot of these cathedrals have labyrinths. And according to some researchers, I don't have the stuff in front of me right now, but the labyrinth represents this movement, the dance that you're supposed to do it. And I mean, I forgot which cathedral it is. It literally has the labyrinth right in the main. It's one of the big cathedrals. It's one of the main ones.
Okay, real quick. So when we take a break, I'm gonna go back and see if I can find. But remember when we were looking at those pictures of the, like, something about diffusion, and I was showing how it looked like a piece of candy and like a wrapper. Remember, and it had the blue lights. Jeff and I were on this for a couple of weeks in a row on the deck.
Didn't you record something in your own?
Yes, I have a little record. That's right. Thank you. I sat here and listened to me. I'm gonna see if I can find it. But there was a picture of like the moment of fusion. It was like a certain kind of picture of a moment of fusion. And then I also found this other diagram that looked like the Templars cross, those things I just showed you. It looked actually exactly like this one right here, right? I'm pretty sure it looked like this. Let me show you, right? And there was like this map of different realities around it. Right. It was showing, like, remember that? Like, I'll find it when we're on the break here. Like, thank you for reminding me that I made a little recording about it. But yes, and when you were showing the tree of life, everything, there's also, we were looking at that thing that was like a Dali painting called Hypercubus or something. Have you seen this? Yeah, here it is. Check this out.
Hyperpubis.
Hypercubus. And this is Laura's a pelvic floor therapist. She's the hyperpubis here, not me. Okay, so this is Dali's nuclear mysticism. Basically.
Oh, yes.
This is Jesus nailed to the cross. It's called the crucifixion or corpus hypercubus, right? But here we go. We've got both the tree of life and the Metatron's cube, and it's showing all the different dimensions of the cross from the different angles. And then there's that same hypercube that I'm basically showing you with the lights. It's the exact same shape. It's the exact same thing. Right.
And this gets into shaky ground because, again, we're talking about symbolism. And the problem with this particular thing that we're looking at right now is that a lot of people believe it actually happened. And but it's so
Right.
alchemical because
Right.
okay, let's say that for the sake of conversation, Jesus Christ was a real, I believe he was a real person. Okay.
Okay.
But let's say for the sake of conversation, these are symbols, right? And the alchemists work on 4 different levels of reality at the same time. So maybe the image of JC is part of the alchemical process. It's one of the symbols. And then the other, these other levels of reality that they're working on could be other things, right? Could be, right, this cube, whatever it is, but the front page of it is Jesus Christ. But then there's a lot more things going on in the background, right, as we're going. And I'm releasing an episode next week where I do a breakdown of alchemy within the Bible. And it's interesting because the story, the biblical story,
Right.
perhaps holding alchemical secrets, but also the original editions in that text having alchemical secrets. So it's, again, layer upon layer. And I get into this whole thing. I translated this text from 1568, and it turns out that alchemist that I translated the work from ended up being the alchemist that Carl Jung cited the most, and the alchemist that gave him the idea of active imagination to explore the inner space instead of outer space.
So I think all of these spiritual books are stories that within them are encoded, right, alchemical formulas or combinations or ideas of what happens when you mix this element from the periodic table with that one, what the reaction will be, what the chaos caused is, if it's harmonizing. I think that's what all that stuff is, right? Like I was showing Ben like some pictures, some drawings that I made one time while Laura was reading me spiritual books. And he's like, you're literally, those drawings literally look like this alchemical reaction or that alchemical reaction. And then if you look at what the page was or the story that she was reading me, that's what those kind of thing, that story was about. And my mind was seeing this sort of science, right? What do you think about the idea of God as a particle, literally the particle, right? And when we see something like this, right, imagine that there might be a particle that when the light hits it, it has the most different angles or the most varied light spectrum around it, right? And that is sort of this, when we think of like, oh, when Jesus Christ appears or when God comes to someone or whatever, the sky opens, the white light comes down, there's all this beautiful sort of prismatic color and whatever. Like, I think this is when light hits certain particles, certain elements at certain angles, or certainly if 2 elements or 2 things come together and create a reaction, the aura around it or the spectrum that's created around it for the person who witnesses that or experiences that opens up the most corners of their mind, that activates the most rooms in the mind palace, right? We'll get into this a little bit more with the disco ball, but let's continue because I almost forgot what we're talking about.
I mean, like I said, we could always do the first video and then we can do another.
We might have to do that.
Second. Yeah, because it's a lot.
All right,
I told you it was a lot. I told you it was a bad idea.
Right? Like you told me you didn't tell me it was a bad idea. I'm like, you want to do this? You're like, okay.
We're 4 minutes in and we still have another 9 after this.
All right, let's finish the part about the barber and the Sweeney Todd, and then we'll take our little break and then we'll come back and we'll do the rest of the video.
Yeah.
Surgery also happened at the barber shop. And then you got famous plays like Sweeney Todd. And if you notice Sweeney Todd, the color scheme of the cover,
just that picture of him sitting in that room also looks a lot like the Black Lodge in Twin Peaks.
They're very intentional. The red and white and black.
Oh no, man.
So Sweeney Todd is actually one of my favorite movies, by the way.
I haven't seen the movie.
Because Sweeney Todd took place on Fleet Street. That was a huge Knights Templar street, as that's where the Temple Church was, the banking system of the Templars.
What if those were sacrifices for that, dude?
See, that is deep right there. So that's where I was going with that Memphis Moon rituals, how these artists are dying. But this color scheme, if you go back to the play, they use the red, white, and black, the Knights Templar colors, the barbershop colors. It's about a barbershop dude. And none of his musicals had this tone and this like color scheme for this was very intentional of Sweeney Todd. Bach, who plays a huge role in Alchemy of Music, the pinnacle of music. And
Okay. Have you ever done the like, have you ever had any really vivid visuals behind your eyes?
Yes.
Okay, so for me, especially if I get in hot water and I rub my eyes, I will have the most psychedelic visuals ever, right? But there's always a black and white checkered floor, right? So something to do when you're pressing on your eyes, right? And you begin to go into this, there is this sort of black and white generated. You're kind of going into this sort of mind palace. There's like the most vivid, bright, psychedelic looking colors, period. And then beneath them, there's always this black and white floor, right? I meant to say something about the black and white floor when we were on the Templar's cross, but I think this has to do with sort of the separation of the parts of your mind. When you see the light photon come into existence, it sort of starts separating out. You know, I don't know what the name of the process is, but whenever I'm having one of these kinds of experiences, there's always black and white checkers around or like pixelated boxes somewhere. Okay, let's hear about the eye.
he went to a surgeon and they made him blind. They botched his eye. And this happened with Handel as well. But the interesting thing is it's by the same guy. This guy, John Taylor.
These lines that are around the world, ley lines, I believe these parallels. I know we covered John Dee and the Black Rock at the North Pole. Well, he was in touch with Mercator, which is a very influential cartographer. Well, what if the intentional planning of these latitude and longitude lines around the world serve as some sort of magical grid that's wrapped around the world in a sympathetic, magical way? You're able to tap into, like how I talked about the mind palaces, where if you have a map of a place, you're able to tap into people's ideas. Yikes.
What
Oh,
you're
that's
talking,
heavy.
what you're talking about there, huh?
I said that?
You said that, right? Okay, but think about this. So we have certain areas of town where a lot of these activities go on, right? Like where he was talking about Fleet Street there. Certainly, like the parties I go to, like 90% of them are in the same general area of town, right? And also other weird things tends to happen at these locations. But what if it's about getting people to come to these highly active locations, right? And then seeing what happens when their genetics or their energy field mixes with whatever's going on in that location. And some people will say the veil's very thin there, but I think probably what's actually happening is there's like specific elements that are either under the ground or in the area based on what the buildings are made of. And those elements are creating that sort of field that we're talking about. And so when you take a person with this sort of genetics or blood code or energy field about themselves, and then you put them in a place that has this energy and you see what happens, then we start to have another understanding of like why people are brought to certain locations for rituals, but also what human trafficking might be about. You need a specific person and you need to move them from where they are to this other place where you want them to be in order for something to happen. Now, there's all these things all of this stuff that has come up around this, but I think a lot of trafficking is really about, you know, they have identified that specific people or specific groups of people may have something infused in their DNA, just like you said, right? That when you bring them to a certain location and something interacts with that, the mind palace or the energy field that allows access to said mind palace. Now, a person can be there and have no idea what's going on, right? They're just like, oh, it feels weird here or whatever it is, right? But if somebody has the map or knows the code, right, or whatever it is, if it's the person who has the genetics, okay. But if it's somebody else trying to tap into that by being either like proximate to that person or by sharing genetic material, which is something that a lot of the deviant behaviors around trafficking actually allow for, right? Then I think we're starting to understand what some of the deeper purpose of this stuff may be.
So yeah, just continue because I got some stuff.
You want to respond to that first, and then I have something to say about this picture you have up right here, and then we'll take a break.
So the idea of the whole bodily secretions, I know we touched on Jesus Christ earlier. Well, again, for the sake of conversation, the lure goes that Mary Magdalene was the one that taught the alchemical secrets to JC, and they were doing tantric sorts of magic. And then you get the whole, again, the Knights Templar with the Holy Grail and these artifacts that they were protecting, supposedly, if they were actually protecting this bloodline, that it wasn't JC on the cross. If that ever did happen, it was actually a substitute. You got the whole Judas substitution story, but then you also have the idea that he lived on for a long time after and had kids, and that was the whole, you know, royal bloodline Da Vinci Code type of thing that we get from there. But it all goes back to this bodily secretion type of thing, the bodily fluids, right? The charging of the body, and alchemy has a lot to do with that as well. I mean, it's all symbolic, so it could have been symbolic for XYZ. So I just find it interesting that you're bringing that up, and it does tie in with alchemy. And it's funny how all the things that we're talking about have to do with, again, chemical reactions, right?
Yeah.
And any chemical reaction is alchemy, because that's essentially what.
Right. And if you have semen or blood or whatever, and you take it and you get it tested, they're going to come up with a genetic code that is a series of letters that is essentially an algorithm, right? For said cut type of thing. And then when we look at some of these writings and coding, we often see the same letters or numerals used over and over and over again, with not a tremendous amount of variation as to what they are, just the combination that they're in.
And also I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, go ahead. It's got to do with bodily fluids. Goodness, it escaped me. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, it's weird. You have some people who are secretors and other who are non-secretors, right? And there's been, you know, whenever we have, you know, obviously we just lived through the biggest collection of genetic material that anyone has ever been through, right?
Oh, yes. Finish genuflect.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Well, you and I should both one weekend be like, I'm not doing anything but finishing genuflect, and you're not doing anything but watching OA, and then we'll come back and we'll chat about it, right?
I'm down. I'm down.
Right. We should lock ourselves in a dark room with only one little pinhole source of light, and
yeah, I'm down. Okay.
So I mean, I do think that is so much about what this is about. When we're talking about bloodlines, everybody's thinking of that has to do with like wealth and inheritance and all, and sure, certainly that's some of it, but it's basically, you know, the idea of like arranged marriage and all of this kind of stuff. The occult practice of it is, let's mix this with that to create a new world, or to open up this possibility, this energy field for a fusion reaction to take place, or whatever it is, right? Let's create material out of this, or there's also things that can be destructive, right? There can be creative or destructive forces, but it happens when two things come together, right? That picture you had up here, right? So, do you know what this looks like?
It looks like that thing in Rome.
Did you ever watch? You're too young, but have you ever heard of a show called The Muppet Show?
No, the
never
Muppets?
Heard of The Muppet Show?
Like the Muppets, like the
Muppets,
puppets?
but there used to be a show called The Muppet Show when I was little.
I didn't see that, but I know what the Muppets.
Check this out, dude. The Muppet. Let me go on YouTube, and I want to play the Muppet Show intro for you. Right? All right. So I did a show with Nish and JJ a few months back called the what was it called? The Dyson Disco Muppet Manifesto. We were talking about we weren't talking about so much like occult, alchemical, ritual kind of stuff, but we were talking about God particle and disco balls and what it was code for, and science and things like that, right? I'm gonna bring up the Muppet
Can we
Show.
watch Camila Giorgi first though in slow motion? Because that looks really interesting.
Camilla, she's a tennis player, right? The Muppet Show intro. Let's see if I can find it. This is one of my favorite songs in the whole world. All right, here's the original theme song. All right, I'm dating myself by showing.
It's the Muppet Show with tonight's guest star, Mr. Joel Gray.
It's time to play the music. It's time to light the light. It's time to meet the Muppets on the Muppet Show tonight.
It's time to put on makeup. It's time to dress up right. It's time to raise the curtain on the Muppet Show tonight. In our house, we use paper plates, and every night after dinner, my wife erases the dishes.
To introduce our guest star, that's what I'm here to do. So it
This isn't
really
the
makes
part.
me
Where's the part with all the
happy.
windows? Oh, this is. I'm sorry. This was the wrong. What happened to the one? With
You
the,
had one job.
I fucked it up. Oh, here it is. It's this one. I'm sorry. I did my job wrong. We're gonna.
It's Mandela effect.
Gotta streamline these ideas. We need
Sorry.
Grammarly.
You need
to watch a
YouTube
commercial,
Premium.
too.
I feel bad about this, but I have a special announcement.
All right, here we go. This is it. Okay, this is the original one. Sorry.
It's the Muppet Show with
love
our very
this song.
special guest star, Mr. Steve Martin.
It's time to play the music. It's time to light the light. It's time to meet the Muppets on the Muppet Show tonight.
It's time to put on makeup. It's time to dress up right. It's time to get things started.
I like the old opening better.
It's time to get things started on the most sensational, inspirational, celebrational, motivational. This is what we call a Muppet Show.
Green smoke.
It's funny you're showing me that because isn't there like a conspiracy with that guy? That dude was the creator of that show. He was a weirdo, wasn't he?
Jim Henson.
Yeah, wasn't he into something like weird, talking to interdimensional entities type of
Well,
stuff?
I'm just saying, right? So if you look at each of the Muppets, right, they each had their own window, right? Like there was a lot of them. There were some that were the main characters, but they each had their own window. My guess would be that this is symbolic for the type of energies or entities you might find in the realm correlated with said element on the periodic table or
Mhm.
or whatever it is, right? And if you look at like what I was saying before about the God particle, if you look at a disco ball with all those different, sort of cubes
Windows,
of glass,
yeah.
right? All the different windows, right? And when the light hits it, you have all of these different rays of lights of colors or whatever, right? It's kind of like generating these sort of different arrays or these different spectrums. And when I look at those Muppets and that building that you had, so we were watching that because in your right, look at this looks exactly like the Muppet windows, right?
What
And-
if
go ahead.
What if the secrets to the universe is embedded within the Muppet Show this entire time and no one even bothers to look because it's Muppets, right?
Because it's Muppets, right?
yeah.
But look at all these little drawings and these things that are inside each one of these windows, right? Each of those characters had like unique things about their personalities that could probably correlate to some of this.
And
right?
those arches are called gateways too, by the way.
Gateways.
They're portals, yeah.
They're
that's the
dimensions, right?
technical
They're
one,
portals.
yeah.
Every fucking square on the disco ball is a portal for the
Mhm.
person who catches the sort of light beam that sort of bounces off of that, right? And I think the Muppets were, I mean, I watched that when I was little, right? I watched that when I was 2 years old. I loved that song, right? So they're initiating and inculcating,
Yes.
people into that outside of their awareness. But for the people who it's just like the Bible, if you know what they're really talking about, my guess would be that we could probably find like a god that's associated with an element on the periodic table that correlates to each Muppet.
That'd be an interesting connection, but I wouldn't doubt it. I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
Because again, it goes back to this being alchemical, the show and everything, right? The way, and Muppets, especially the way it's resonated throughout reality or culturally, right? Mimetically, because that's what it is. They impregnate society with these ideas in these shows, and these shows, they do their own thing and they start to reproduce. Essentially, they take on a mind of their own. They keep on making it because people want more of it, right? Or else they wouldn't keep making it. So again, it's a very alchemical process to turning the lead into gold. Essentially is what it is. They're presenting a concept, an idea first season, see how it does. And then if it turns into gold, right? Look at what is it, Game of Thrones, or any other popular show that has been going on for a bunch of seasons. You know, it's essentially, it's what it is. And we're witnessing this real time. And yeah, I could have had a friend of mine who told me something weird about the guy from some movie he made about some dude who's trapped in a cube, and then he finds out he's made of jelly or something like that.
Is that the Dark Crystal or whatever?
No, it's
Jim Henson movies. Hold on a second. Jim Henson movies. Let's see what we got. We've got. You're saying that this person said that.
So let me pull up my screen. So he made a movie called. Let me see if you can. Let me know if you can see this.
Okay, I can see it.
The Cube is an hour-long teleplay.
Okay.
So this is written by your boy Jim Henson.
Yeah, my boy, for sure.
Essentially, check this out, because we're talking about cubes and hypercubes and all that stuff. This was back in 1997. So an unnamed man, simply called the Man in the Cube, is trapped in a cube-like white room as he asks if anyone can hear him. A stool is brought in by a maintenance man named Arnie, who discovers it covered in strawberry jam as he wipes it down. After Arnie leaves, the man tries to find the door. He encounters a variety of people come through various hidden doors, in which each one claim that he can get out through his own door. So we're talking about our own portals, our own dimensions,
our own windows in the Muppet Show. Yep.
His first visitor is a woman named Marjorie, who claims the man is her husband. The man is her husband, Ted, as he appears with parents are also present. Her door closes on the man before she can get him out. The man then meets Mr. Thomas, etc., etc. So then at the end, it gets kind of dark, and I'm gonna get spoiler alert, but at the end of it, so at the end of it, right here, all the people he had encountered enter and laugh at him as Arnie states that this is all a joke. And rage, he then tells them he's had enough with their tricks, and no matter what happens, he knows he is real. The man then leaves the cube as the people applaud him. The man is then escorted into an office so that the head of the organization can sign his release. Once there, the man reflects on the revelation of his own realness. So he starts to question his own self, right? So it's like this big elaborate hoax, and then he accidentally cuts himself with a knife while demonstrating and is asked to taste his blood. He does so and discovers his blood is strawberry jam. The head of the organization, his office fade away to reveal the man is still trapped in the cube, but apparently they had given him a firearm and he tried to do something with it. Obviously, you know what happens. And it's like this big, weird.
I'll have to check this out. I've never heard of this, but.
Look right here, Jim Henson from.
Jim Henson. Yeah, I've never heard of this. I'm going to check this out. Earlier, you were talking about the cathedrals, right? So when we were down this road with these things we're talking about, if you look at some of the oldest, most beautiful cathedrals in places like Italy and whatnot, and then you go if you look up quantum computers with light photons, they look exactly the same. So, and what you just shared with me, it's like, I don't think we're living in a simulation. I think it's possible we're living in a quantum computer that operates on light photons that sort of creates simulations that we experience as our day-to-day life, but we're not living in one overall simulation. So basically his thing, like he thinks he's out of the cube, but he's really still in the cube. He's just learned one more thing about the cube, right? And if our existence is inside of some large quantum computer, maybe there's an outside that we can get to, maybe there's not, but you know, this sort of revelation of the method is realizing, oh, okay, there's a projection or there's a simulation. And once you realize it, you can step out of that. And then you think you're out of this thing, but you don't understand that you're not actually in the simulation. You're in the computer that generates simulations endlessly. And you are part of that, you know, like you're participating, right? With the way your eyes are perceiving the light photons, you're sort of either to a certain extent generating or co-creating these simulations with the technology that you're living in.
I don't know when we're gonna take the break, but
Let's take a
read
break.
you what
After we read this, yeah.
Fulcanelli, right? Because we've talked about a lot of different things, and we've touched on the sacred geometry aspect of it. Well, when you align things geometrically, that's also very important, and not only nuclear energy, but in alchemy as well. And you have a meeting of Fulcanelli and Bergier, and Bergier was I think a physicist, nuclear scientist, something of the time. And Fulcanelli again appears in his lab 1937, I think about 10 years after he had disappeared or achieved the Magnum Opus and dissolved out of reality. He comes and visits him and he goes, "You're on the brink of success, as indeed are several others of our scientists today. Please allow me. Be very, very careful. I warn you, the liberation of nuclear power is easier than you think. And the radioactivity artificially produced can poison the atmosphere of our planet in a very short time, a few years. Moreover, atomic explosives can be produced from a few grains of metal powerful enough to destroy whole cities. I'm telling you this for a fact. The alchemists have known it for a very long time. I shall not attempt to prove to you what I'm now going to say, but I ask you to repeat it to Mr. Hellbronner, which was another scientist guy. Certain geometrical arrangements of highly purified materials are enough to release atomic forces without having recourse to either electricity or vacuum techniques." Here he goes. "The secret of alchemy is this. There is a way of manipulating matter and energy so as to produce what modern scientists called a field of force.
Yep.
The field acts on the observer and puts him in a privileged position vis-a-vis the universe. From this position, he has access to realities which are ordinarily hidden from us by time and space, matter and energy. This is what we call the great work." And because he says this to Bergier, I think it was the OSS or whatever, the precursor to the CIA or whatever, they searched for him. The government was looking for Fulcanelli because he predicted nuclear power 5 years before the Manhattan Project. And they were like, who is this guy? Who is he working for? What does he know? We need to find him. And they never found him. But this was 5 years before the Manhattan Project.
It's because he's hiding in one of the dimensions he has access to because he understands the force field.
Exactly.
Right?
That's Fulcanelli.
I mean, I think that's where all the like lost civilizations are. I think they're
Yes.
hiding right here, just at a different angle. We just can't
Absolutely.
see them because they're hiding on the other side of the sort of light angle photon, right? I just want to show you this picture right here quickly. See this right here? So this is a part of an inside of a photonic quantum computer, right?
That's the pelvic floor of a quantum computer.
Pretty much, right? But what was funny is like we were looking at this and I was like, this looks exactly like a picture I saw on a friend's Facebook page today that she had just been to like some old cathedral in Italy. So we were comparing the pictures of the inside of this Xanadu quantum computer light photon thing. And it literally looked like all of the things inside of the cathedral. So I feel like the cathedrals were a nod to the idea that we are living inside of a fantastic palace known as a quantum computer that activates, that acts on light photons.
And
Right.
also the organ in these cathedrals too.
Yeah. Right. For sure. Okay, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and see if we can get through a little bit more of the video.
I highly doubt it, but
I
sure.
was way too ambitious in what I thought we could get done here.
It's fine. We know we can't have conversation like regular conversations. It's always like supersonic speed, super sane.
All right,
Whatever
so
we get
this
together.
part eventually will reach the public in some way or another, probably not on YouTube, but maybe on Rockfin or some other places, and certainly wherever you put it eventually. So let people know where they can find your stuff.
TJOJP.com. I've been trying to consolidate everything into one place. And if you go on there, you can usually find everything I'm giving. My RSS feed is on
We're
there.
putting Juan to sleep here.
No, it's so it was actually a burp. So I'm sorry.
He was,
Yeah,
I was disguising his burp as a yawn.
tjojp.com. All my stuff is on there, and any major podcast platform, YouTube. I'm on TikTok. I'm everywhere. Twitter.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back on the other side. I'm going to show you the thing that I was telling you about that I'll find while we're on break, and then we'll continue with our film study. Okay, see you on the other side, guys.